Hey Doug, how's it going?
Hey, good. Beautiful day here in the park.
Gorgeous. Well, thanks for doing this with me. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
Yeah. So this is a part of a project, Reading in Recovery. These are books that are somewhat meaningful beyond normal recovery literature, but something that we've found along the way that's been helpful to us in our journey. And Doug has thankfully agreed to participate in the project. So I'm going to just hand it over to him for a second to tell us about his book a little bit.
Okay, so the book we're going to discuss today is titled Nothing to Grasp, and it's by a lady by the name of Joan Tollifson. And Joan is a radical practitioner of non-duality, and she also practices traditional Buddhism and non-traditional meditation practices. And the way she articulates she's also in recovery, and she's been sober for a time, and she's kind of got a interesting take on her recovery in the 12 steps. So I really relate to her, the way she articulates, and she's my favorite author currently.
Very nice. So, and how would you characterize your spirituality before starting recovery, if at all?
It ebbed and flowed. You know, I would go through periods of deep trust in Christianity, and then I would walk away from it, but still have a belief, if you will, and faith. But the last couple of years, I've been exploring other alternatives, such as Buddhism and Zen, and so yeah, it's evolving, and it evolves. Seems like it evolves on a daily basis for me.
So when you first got into a recovery program and they said to you, you know, this requires a spiritual experience, or maybe they didn't say that, but was there a moment where you kind of like had to try to figure that out, or how did that strike you when that first was announced, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, it was suggested that I just get on my knees and pray and ask for help for my alcoholism. It was when I was admitted to Talbot Hall. Actually, it was April the 2nd of '99, so it's been just 27 years since I walked in there. And so I've just had a spiritual awakening, if you will, and a deep trust that God doesn't want me dead, He doesn't want me drunk, and I surrender.
All right.
It's been my experience.
Yeah. So when would you say, so that's a very typical recovery sort of trajectory. So this surrender, and then this knowledge that there's a higher power that doesn't want your destruction, that loves you and wants you to prosper. So in the most general sense of that word, how did you experience that, if at all? I mean, what was the sort of, subjective experience of the whole thing, if there was one?
Yeah, I mean, it was a transference out of my head to my heart.
Okay.
By all means, you know, a deep-seated gut check, if you will, and I just knew. I knew, you know, and I've had that deep trust ever since.
Cool. So, as with a lot of us in recovery, actually a lot of this project, frankly, comes out of this kind of reaching a, perhaps let's say plateau or a doldrum, perhaps, in long-term recovery. Do you have any kind of experiences like that as a part of your spiritual journey or whatever?
A lot.
A lot, okay, yeah. Is this around the same time that you kind of discovered non-duality? Has it been kind of a renewal of that, or is it just separate?
Non-duality, I've discovered in the last couple of years. 20 years ago, April 26th, actually, of 2006, is when I dedicated my life to Christ and became a Christian, quote unquote.
Right.
And I got pretty rigid on my beliefs about, I mean, you're either in or you're out.
Right.
Type
That type
philosophy.
of Christianity, right? Yeah.
And that over the years is relaxed, and I still, have a love of Jesus. I still believe in Jesus, but I believe in other things too. I don't think it's just etched in granite.
Mm. And so how would you describe the sort of like experience of hitting a plateau or a doldrum, subjective experience?
Yeah, what happened during COVID.
As it did for a lot of people, yeah.
And I got a distaste for organized religion, my church that I was a member of, because they were ignoring all the safety precautions of COVID.
Oh, I see.
And I kind of thought that was irresponsible. So I just stopped going. And at that time, I picked up meditation. And
through like a book or through an actual class? Or?
Actually, my son sent me an app called 10% Happier.
Okay.
It's facilitated by an ex-broadcaster by the name of Dan Harris. And I've been using that app ever since. I meditate every day using that guided meditation app.
And how would you characterize your meditation practice? If you care to go into any detail around like what it is or like.
Yeah, it's totally transformed my life, and it has just opened me up to awareness,
Okay, so it's an awareness practice.
Totally.
Just like.
And the breathing techniques and quieting your mind, if you will. I had a really active brain, which I still do, but I recognize it and accept it today, and just is. But it's really helped me transform my life, the way I conduct myself, with emotional roller coasters and those kind of things.
Okay, yeah. So it's a kind of expansion of the consciousness, like greater awareness, and also like has this sort of like de-escalation function as well.
Yeah, and it gets better all the time.
Good to know. I have always struggled with the meditation practice for sure.
Yeah, I rely on it heavily.
So I think that gets us into the non-duality, spirituality bit. So was there any so you obviously experienced some kind of a tension within yourself around like the traditional form of Christianity that you started to practice, and there were certain aspects of it that weren't working. But as you came to discover this new, technique, religious practice perhaps, was there any tension between the two that you felt, or?
Only in my mind.
Only in your mind?
Yeah, that I created. There was no reason to create it.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just teaching me that it's nothing to grasp, as the title of the book says.
Right. So
it just is.
Right. And so let's talk a little bit about that, because I don't think a lot of people, well, maybe more people are nowadays, but probably not a lot of people are familiar with non-duality. So what does it mean to you? Let's start there.
It means non-separateness. It means that we're all pretty much exist in the same realm, and we're not separate. And it's not something you really can define. I mean, it's more of a, I don't even know if you call it a philosophy or a concept, but it's just awareness, consciousness. I mean, there's so many words to describe it.
Yeah.
And they're not really appropriate.
Right. Every word falls away.
Yeah. It's not something to pursue. It's not something that I have. It's just the thought of and the statement I am is what I hold on to. Just I am.
So that certainly has a great crossover with the Hebrew Bible for sure, and especially the great I am.
Yeah. Exactly.
The unnameable, the ineffable. Yeah.
Exactly.
God who cannot be captured by a name. So yeah, that's nice. I often think of, and just see how this goes by, how you think about this, but I think about like whenever I start kind of trying to frame Eastern religion in like a way that I can get it, because I didn't grow up with any of it. But I frame it with two concepts, and one is from Buddhism, that's no self, and Joan talks a lot about no self. Like this is like one of her main, I would say, meditations where we get all caught up, and whenever we're caught up, it's being caught up in the self. And so like so much of her writing is about not getting caught up in the self by realizing that you don't have one. Did you have any? I mean, are you have any experiences like that, or is there,
yeah.
or that?
I mean, that's what it is. I mean, that's the essence of the message. And it's also the here nowness. You know, it's just here now. And when I find myself getting caught up in myself frequently, and I can recognize it and realize that thoughts are just thoughts, and they're not that important. You know,
Right.
It's like clouds in the sky, passing. It's just another aspect of the practice.
Right. For me, I think of the clouds in the sky passing, or thoughts are just thoughts, and all that kind of stuff, and even like ultimately the no self concept in terms of the Southern Eastern Buddhist, very simply put, a concept of impermanence. Just everything is in constant flux and changing and passing away, so that there's nothing to grasp, as the title would say, in terms of like whatever you think you've got a solid hold of, then that thing is going to eventually disappear. You're going to find yourself holding on to nothing in the end. So like the grasping though is suffering, is pain.
Exactly.
And even though there's nothing really we're even grasping, but like it still causes so much pain. And I don't know. So that's no self and impermanence. And then the other big concept is more from Taoism, the Wu Wei, which is the purposeless action. So here this is related to no self, in that it's a denying of an agent, of a self that like does things or whatever. And I wonder sometimes if this connects pretty well, which I think it does, with this realization in AA of like unmanageability that leads to a total surrender.
I would 100% agree with that, and it's all intertwined, and it all points to the same thing, which is here now. Everything changes. There's nothing permanent. I really got deep into this the last couple years, when everything changed in my life, and it changed abruptly, and I didn't like it, and I didn't know what to do. And I had back to AA. I was not participating in AA for a time, probably 10 years of my recovery, and this experience that I had just kind of awakened me, and I knew what to do intuitively. I just knew to go back to AA, and all these things have been put in front of me that allowed me to cope and deal with it, and then grow. And it's given me a lot of hope, and it's just ever evolving. So the good and the bad. I also had a deep material attachment, and I've learned to let go of all that crap. And just like I can come over to this park on a daily basis with my dog and just realize that this is nirvana. It's here and now. The birds singing, watching this park in the spring flourish, everything changes. I experience that on a daily basis, so it all intertwines for me, and it's evolving and growing.
Yes. And so this experience of like, you say, radical this place of, I guess, detachment,
surrender, brought to my knees, if you will. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to drink, which, the first time I had that feeling since I got sober.
Just relief from your depression, relief from just like stress, relief from just
like imminent doom.
Imminent doom. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know what the hell to do myself.
Yeah.
And then everything has changed, and it's not anything that I would have written this type of script, but in hindsight, it's been good for me, and to be able to realize and stay in the present. Another big aspect of the thing is my anger.
Uh,
I used to experience a lot of anger, but I haven't experienced anger in probably 6 months.
uh,
I'll have anger is a normal emotion, but it's not a type of anger that um, eats me alive, if you will. So that's been a great practice.
So I guess the other thing I was thinking about, because I always wind up relating things to Greek philosophy, because that's my background, at least partially, and well, just the history of philosophy in general. So this is how I make the bridge between East and West for myself, at any rate. But the idea of already here, the now. Joan said something really interesting to me. Tollifson said something really interesting to me when she said that, like, even like grasping after, and this is like a big mistake a lot of people make, grasping after the now is also a problem.
Yeah.
So we really can't be upset with ourselves when we find ourselves not in the now or whatever, because that could become a whole nother source of stress if we're not careful about it or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there's good and bad in life, and that acceptance and understanding is key for me. And she emphasizes that. We're gonna have good and bad moments. It just is. Another thing that I admire about Joan is she struggled with serious health issues, and she never complains about it. She just accepts it as it is. She was born with half of an arm, and has been able to, cope with that and exist and not make that a problem. It's just.
Yeah, her struggle, just to pivot just slightly, with addiction is also interesting too. She describes herself as like, really into drugs and alcohol in her teenage years and into her 20s. And then, she had this kind of radical transformation, but, it wasn't as radical as we might think. And this is a really kind of unorthodox AA thing, I'm about to say. But she, she had slip-ups, and one of the things that she had to do was like accept those as a part of the journey. Like, she gives a really good example of something that she says she still struggles with, which is biting her fingers. And she used to get really upset and shameful and shame herself about the fact that she couldn't stop biting. And she would go through long periods where she actually could stop, and then all of a sudden she'd find herself biting her fingers again. And part of her strategy was to just accept that was a part of it. So I don't know if you thought about anything about what it says about, addiction and recovery.
Yeah, totally. And the nail biting thing, I have the same experience. I bite my nails. I have all my life, and to the point where sometimes they bleed. And it's like,
wow, yeah.
I have learned to accept it and have that presence of mind to know when I'm doing it. So, and it's not something that I can control. It seems like it just is. But her experience with recovery is she just accepted it, and she didn't have to follow a 12-step program. She just had a deep surrender or conviction that she was able to not drink. And there's a lot of ways to get sober. And, so that, I think that you don't necessarily have to practice AA to get sober. She's a good example of that. But her quality of life seems to be pretty good not using AA. My experience is AA has given me so much, and I'm so grateful for it. Like the community, like meeting this group of guys that we do this book study with. It's totally broadened my horizons.
Yeah.
And I'm the old guy, and I kind of like it. The fellowship is indescribable of AA.
Yeah, so that's for me the main thing too. I just want to co-sign with what you're saying, because whatever practices we discover are just tremendous help, or can be, but it's the fellowship that, for me, keeps it new and reinvigorated, because there's just like the people around us are always, I mean, there's nobody more interesting than, well, there's probably nobody more intelligent either. I mean, than an addict,
Yeah.
than a drunk. I mean, they're great company. Like, not always. Let me not romanticize this too much,
Yeah.
but like, in the throes of disease, it's not a lot of fun, but the fellowship is the main thing. It becomes the main thing, at least for me. So, yeah, there's the program and the spiritual steps, which have been, refined from just the greatest hits of human spirituality in some ways. But then there's, there's this. There's our conversations.
Yeah.
That's what makes it totally worthwhile to me. And that's what puts me in the now. Like, without effortlessly, I'm in the now. If I'm with a brother, talking through, whatever it is.
I agree.
Yeah. But so there's a sort of balance between this idea, and I think it's really a contradiction, but a productive contradiction between being, everything is already the way it's supposed to be, what some people would call being in the now. Like, she actually says at one point in the book, the only perfection is the perfection of right now. It's not something down the road or whatever. But then you've got this other contradiction of change. And so that's the same contradiction that I think is at the heart of AA, the heart of just any recovery program, where you start with this radical acceptance, and then it's from that place of total acceptance that you get this change that doesn't come from deliberation. And she tries to talk about that a lot in the book, that it's not this manipulative, like, intentional kind of like, although to me sometimes it kind of has to be, but it kind of comes from a different place, because she could not stop drinking, and she could not stop, biting her fingers or whatever, by willing it. I mean, this is this really crazy contradiction that we all have to struggle with when we want to change. There's this passive activity, unintentional intentionality. I don't know if you had any thoughts around that or not.
Yeah, I do. I've evolved into quite the disciplinarian. So I have practices I'll do every day. And it starts with meditation, formal meditation, and then prayer, and then I'll read literature, I'll read my Bible, I'll read the 24-hour book, and then I'll do the yoga practice. And I've also picked up Qigong, and I've investigated Stoicism practices too, and that discipline. And all these things that I do repetitively, daily, at times I'll realize how far I've come, how far my growth has been. And so I'm a big proponent of discipline. And I wouldn't call it self-discipline. I just learned to do it, and I do it.
Yeah.
It's not
Having a practice.
It's not my will.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
It just is.
Yeah. Well, we talked a lot in our men's spirituality group about this idea of having a practice and sticking to it as a kind of like, I don't know, form of commitment, but it is interesting how it also helps us to stay out of our way at the same time. Even though it's deliberative and intentional, it's setting an intention, which seems contradictory, but it is at the same time the thing that allows us somehow, paradoxically, but to stay out of our own way.
Exactly.
It's
exactly my experience.
Yeah,
it's totally out of self.
That's right. Yeah.
My default mode is self.
That's right. Yeah. So I guess we'll just end up with this kind of last and framing that I was thinking about, and then I'll ask you for any final thoughts. But I brought up Greek philosophy and forgot to mention it, but the Parmenides believed that all change was actually kind of an illusion, which to me is sort of like along the idea of right here, right now, so that it's perfect the way it is. Nothing needs to happen. Like, it just, everything is or it isn't.
Yeah.
And then Heraclitus, they never actually had a formal debate, but Heraclitus did kind of set himself up against Parmenides. As far as we can tell, they're both considered pre-Socratic, so we don't have a lot of their own original writing, but the most famous thing about Heraclitus is this Eastern concept of impermanence. So that, he talked about, you can never step into the same river twice because it's always flowing, it's always changing, so that life is a flow. So for me, this is just one more way to kind of encapsulate the contradiction between everything right now doesn't need to go anywhere, but everything's going everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
So like it's this hard thing to get your mind wrapped around, and I guess the good thing is that we don't have to.
That's right.
That's right. So
Yeah, that's good, Marty.
yeah.
I like that. And you can also parallel that to the ocean and waves. I mean,
Nice.
I forget the name of the author, but I think it's in every wave, the eternity of the sea. And, waves are not separate. They're part of the ocean. It's like the map in a territory. You can't map anything. It's the territory. And John Butler is just another, he's a Christian mystic that I've been watching his videos on YouTube, and he describes it as letting go. We're all grasped like this, and all we have to do is, let it go and realize, this is it. So, yeah.
Beautiful. I guess sometimes in Buddhism it would be thought of as just like a acceptance of samsara, acceptance of the suffering and the cycles and all the things that are necessary, like just all at once. But it's still being rolled out over space-time at the same time.
Yeah.
So, any last thoughts, Doug? Or
I can't believe I've talked as much as I have.
it was great. I really appreciated it, man. I feel like I learned a lot about you, and I learned a lot more about recovery in general. So I thank you very much for being brave and willing to participate in this. So.
It was a pleasure, Marty.
All right, bud. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right.